Welcome back to Crime Time Inc. You know, some crimes just stick with you, and today we're tackling one of those, the D.B. Cooper case. It's been, what, over 50 years since that Boeing 727 got hijacked?
Yeah.
And we still don't know who this guy was or if he even survived that insane parachute jump.
I know.
It's the early unsolved air piracy case in commercial aviation history.
Right.
And honestly, the details just get weirder the deeper you go.
Yeah, what I find so fascinating is how meticulously planned the hijacking was. Yet it seems like Cooper may have underestimated the risks involved in the actual escape. It raises the question, was he a seasoned pro, or was this an amateur who got in way over his head?
Okay, so you've got a stack of stuff here for me. FBI files, old news clippings, even some analysis of how this case became a whole pop culture thing.
Right.
Where should we even start with this?
Let's begin with the hijacking itself on November 24th, 1971. Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a seemingly ordinary flight, becomes the stage for one of the most baffling crimes in history.
Right. And the source material really paints a picture of this guy. He calls himself Dan Cooper. We'll get to the whole DB mix-up later. And he passes a note to a flight attendant claiming to have a bomb.
Right.
But here's the thing. He's not some raving lunatic. Witnesses describe him as calm,
Right.
even polite, which just adds to the mystery.
Absolutely. His demands were incredibly specific, too. Not just any money, but $200,000 in negotiable American currency, all $20 bills.
Wow.
And then there's the parachute situation. He demanded 2 sets, front and back.
Okay.
Did he intend to take a hostage? Was he unsure which type of parachute he'd need? Or did this point to knowledge of skydiving we just haven't uncovered?
And get this. The FBI files mention Cooper saying he had a grudge when asked why he was targeting Northwest Airlines specifically. Talk about a tantalizing detail.
Right.
It opens a whole can of worms about potential motives, right?
It certainly does. Was it a personal vendetta against the airline? A disgruntled employee seeking revenge? Or was it a smokescreen to throw investigators off? The fact that he never elaborated on this grudge only deepens the mystery.
Okay, so he's got the money, the parachutes, and the plane is diverted to Seattle-Tacoma Airport.
Right.
What happened during the exchange? I mean, this wasn't just a quick in-and-out job, was it?
Not at all. The exchange at Seattle-Tacoma was a tense, drawn-out affair. The FBI scrambled to meet Cooper's demands, and there were hours of back-and-forth negotiations.
Wow.
Interestingly, he showed a mix of meticulous planning and improvisation. For example, he insisted on having the money packed in a specific way and even used a parachute to create a makeshift money bag.
And the whole refueling thing added another layer of complexity, didn't it?
Yeah.
Our sources say it took longer than expected, which must have ramped up the tension for everyone involved.
Absolutely. You can imagine the pressure building as the minutes ticked by. And this delay may have contributed to Cooper's growing impatience. He gave very specific instructions to the crew for their next flight. Low altitude, unpressurized cabin, landing gear down, heading southeast toward Mexico City. He even wanted them to leave the aft air stair open.
Oh my gosh.
They managed to talk him out of that last demand, but it speaks volumes about his state of mind at that point.
So the plane takes off again with a second refueling planned in Reno, but things take a dramatic turn somewhere over southwestern Washington.
Right. Flight attendant Tina Mucklow was the last person to see Cooper. He instructed her to stay in the cockpit while he seemingly prepared for his jump. A warning light came on indicating the aft air stair had been deployed. When the crew asked over the intercom if he needed help, Cooper simply replied, no.
And then silence. I can only imagine what that moment must have been like for the crew realizing he'd actually jumped.
The pilot's account in the FBI files describes a sudden upward pitch of the aircraft's tail, likely caused by Cooper jumping with the money. Wow.
Investigators used this detail along with radar data and weather reports to try and pinpoint his jump location. But even with these clues, finding him proved impossible.
So the plane lands safely in Reno, but Cooper has vanished. They scoured the potential landing zone, but it seemed like he had disappeared without a trace.
And that's where the real investigation begins. Despite his meticulous planning, Cooper did leave behind some crucial evidence.
Let's talk about that evidence. What did they find? What clues did he leave behind?
Well, he wasn't as careful as you might think. The FBI found 66 fingerprints on the plane, a mix of latent prints on surfaces and a few on cigarette butts. They also recovered his black clip-on tie, a mother-of-pearl tie clip, and most intriguingly, 2 of the 4 parachutes.
Hold on, 2 of the parachutes. Why would he leave 2 behind? Did he have a change of plans?
That's one of the big questions. One of the parachutes had been opened and had 3 shroud lines cut from the canopy.
This sparked debate among investigators and skydiving experts. Some theorize he was trying to create a makeshift drag chute to slow his descent, while others believe he might have used the lines for something else, maybe securing the money or even modifying the other parachute.
So they have fingerprints, a tie clip, and 2 parachutes. What about the ransom money? Did any of it ever turn up?
Years later, in 1980, a young boy playing along the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington, stumbled upon 3 bundles of $20 bills, part of the ransom money.
That must have been huge news at the time.
Yeah.
Reigniting interest in the case.
Yeah.
But it also raises so many questions. Why only a small portion of the money?
Right.
And how did it end up there 9 years after the hijacking?
Right. It's not like someone just tossed it there recently. Scientists conducted something called diatom analysis on the bills, which involves studying the types of microscopic algae found on them. This analysis suggested that the bills hadn't been submerged in the river water immediately after the hijacking. They entered the water sometime later, potentially months or even years later.
Okay, so we've got physical evidence, but what about eyewitness accounts?
Yeah.
Were there any composite sketches created?
Yes. The FBI created several composite sketches based on descriptions from the flight attendants and passengers. But eyewitness testimony can be unreliable, especially under such high-stress conditions.
Right.
And as we know, memories can fade and be influenced by later information.
Yeah.
So while these sketches have narrowed down potential suspects, they weren't definitive.
And of course, we can't forget the infamous reporter's error that gave us the name D.B. Cooper. The original reporting got his name wrong, and it stuck.
It's a perfect example of how media narratives can influence public perception even when they're based on inaccurate information.
Okay, so we've got the hijacking, the evidence, and the media's role in shaping the narrative.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the suspects.
Yeah.
The FBI investigated hundreds of them over the years, right?
They did, and our sources highlight a few of the most prominent ones, each with their own intriguing backstories and potential connections to the case. Where should we start?
Let's start with the guy who seems like he walks straight out of a true crime novel, Robert Rackstraw. He's got this whole mysterious past, Vietnam vet, possible CIA connections, even faked his own death at one point.
He certainly fits the profile of someone capable of pulling off a daring heist. And there are some visual similarities between Rackstraw and the composite sketches.
Okay.
Plus, he had parachute training from his time in the military, and some point to his history of risky and criminal behavior like explosives possession and check-kiting schemes.
Well, what's check-kiting? I don't think everyone's familiar with that term.
It's a type of fraud where someone writes checks from an account with insufficient funds, hoping to deposit money from another account before the check clears. It's a risky game of financial juggling that requires a certain level of audacity and planning qualities that might align with our mysterious hijacker.
So Rackstraw sounds like he could have pulled it off, but did the FBI find any concrete evidence linking him to the crime?
No direct evidence surfaced, but his evasive answers and sometimes contradictory statements kept him in the spotlight for years. He's denied being Cooper, but some argue he's done so in a way that suggests he's enjoying the notoriety.
It's like he's playing a cat and mouse game with the public and investigators.
Okay, so we've got Rackstraw, the enigmatic ex-military man with a questionable past. Who else stands out?
Well, there's Kenneth Christensen, a Northwest Orient employee and former paratrooper who fits the general description of Cooper.
Oh, okay.
Flight attendant Florence Schaffner even said his photos were the closest match to Cooper's appearance out of all the suspects she had been shown.
That's interesting. Do we know anything about his personality or if he had any reason to hold a grudge against Northwest Orient?
Well, he was known to be a bit of a loner and was reportedly fond of bourbon, just like Cooper.
Some accounts suggest he might have had access to information that could have aided in planning the hijacking.
Okay.
But nothing concrete was ever confirmed.
So we've got a potential insider with military experience and a taste for bourbon.
Right.
Are there any other suspects we should be aware of?
Let's talk about L.D. Cooper, brought to the FBI's attention by his niece, Marla Cooper.
Okay.
She remembers her uncle acting strangely around the time of the hijacking, talking about doing something mischievous with walkie-talkies at their grandmother's house just before it all happened. Then later that day, he came back with a bloody shirt claiming it was from a car accident.
That's pretty suspicious timing. And didn't she also say something about him having a connection to the Dan Cooper comic book character?
Yes. Marla Cooper recalls her uncle being obsessed with the comic book character Dan Cooper and having one of the comics pinned to his wall.
Wow.
It feels like an almost unbelievable coincidence.
It does make you wonder if maybe that's where he got the inspiration for his alias.
Yeah.
So, what did the FBI make of all this? Did they find any evidence to back up her claims?
They investigated, but like many leads in this case, definitive proof linking L.D. Cooper to the hijacking never materialized.
So we got Rackstraw Christensen
Mm.
and L.D. Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
That's already 3 potential Coopers,
Right.
each with their own set of intriguing details and unanswered questions. This case is like a rabbit hole, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And we haven't even touched on some of the other intriguing possibilities. There's William J. Smith, a World War II vet who had both naval aviation experience and a potential grudge against the transportation industry after losing his pension due to a railroad company bankruptcy. And then there's the theory that Cooper was actually a woman named Barbara Dayton disguised as a man.
Oh, a female D.B. Cooper.
Right.
That's a twist.
The possibilities are truly endless, and I think that's part of what makes this case so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a puzzle with so many pieces, and each new piece we uncover only seems to raise more questions than it answers.
It's like we're peeling back layers of an onion, and every layer reveals something new and unexpected. Okay, we're running out of time for this part of our deep dives.
Okay.
But before we move on, what's the one thing that stands out to you most in this first part of the story?
For me, it's the combination of meticulous planning and seemingly reckless execution. Cooper clearly put a lot of thought into the hijacking itself, but the jump seems almost impulsive,
Right.
a leap of faith taken with minimal preparation. It makes me question his true motives and whether he was truly prepared for the risks involved.
That's a great point.
Right.
And it perfectly sets the stage for the next part of our deep dive, where we'll explore the theories surrounding Cooper's fate and the enduring legacy of this baffling case.
You know, as we delve deeper into this case, it becomes clear that the D.B. Cooper story is more than just a crime.
Yeah.
It's become woven into the fabric of American culture.
I've noticed that too. It's like he's transcended criminal status and become this almost mythical figure.
Exactly. And our sources show how this fascination has manifested in so many ways. There are countless books, documentaries, even fictionalized accounts inspired by Cooper's daring feat. The Visit Vancouver WA article, for instance, highlights how businesses in the Pacific Northwest have capitalized on the D.B. Cooper legend with themed events, merchandise, and even beers named after elements of the case.
It's wild to think that a single event can have such a lasting impact on popular culture. It speaks to our obsession with unsolved mysteries, I guess.
Right.
But it also makes me wonder about the copycat hijackings that followed.
Yeah.
Did Cooper's success, at least in the short term, inspire a wave of imitators?
Absolutely. The Wikipedia article details a number of hijacking cases from the early 1970s that bear striking similarities to the Cooper case.
Oh, wow.
Hijackers demanding ransom money, specifying the type of aircraft, even requesting parachutes. It became a disturbing trend.
It's a shame that something so criminal could be seen as inspirational.
Right.
What happened to those copycats? Did they meet the same fate as Cooper?
Sadly, most of those copycat hijackings did not end well for the perpetrators. Authorities quickly learned from Cooper's case, tightening security measures and developing new strategies for dealing with airborne extortion attempts.
So in a twisted way, D.B. Cooper inadvertently forced the aviation industry to step up its game when it came to security.
You could say that. His actions exposed vulnerabilities in the system, leading to improvements that ultimately made air travel safer for everyone. It's a reminder that even out of criminal acts, some positive change can emerge.
Okay, so we've talked about copycats and the media frenzy surrounding Cooper, but something else has always intrigued me about this case. The sheer number of people who have come forward claiming to be or to know D.B. Cooper.
Yeah.
It's like everyone wants a piece of this mystery.
It's incredible, isn't it? The D.B. Cooper Identified article we have here lists a bunch of these confessions and claims, each adding another layer of complexity to an already tangled web.
Right.
We've got deathbed confessions, tales of hidden identities, even people claiming to have proof of how the ransom money was spent.
Like the story of Barbara Dayton.
Yeah.
Claiming she was actually D.B. Cooper disguised as a man.
Right.
I mean, that's a plot twist worthy of Hollywood.
Right.
But was there any truth to her claim?
Unfortunately, no. Her story, while sensational, lacked any real evidence to support it. But it highlights the allure of this mystery.
Yeah.
The desire to be a part of something so extraordinary, even if it means fabricating details or embellishing the truth.
What about Walter Rica, the former paratrooper who gave a detailed account of how he pulled off the hijacking? His story was even recorded, right?
Yes, and it's a compelling account filled with specific details that align with certain aspects of the case,
Ah.
but again, concrete evidence is lacking.
Oh.
His friend, Carl Lauren, claims to have documents and information supporting Rika's involvement, and even suggests that Rika went on to become a spy.
A spy. Seriously, this just gets more and more unbelievable.
I know, right? It sounds like something out of a spy novel. But without verifiable proof, these claims remain firmly in the realm of speculation.
And then there's Robert Rackstraw again,
Right.
who seems to flit between being a suspect and a confessor.
Yeah.
One minute, he's vehemently denying any involvement, and the next, he's dropping hints that suggest he knows more than he's letting on.
It's a classic case of mixed messages.
Yeah.
His background and his evasive behavior have fueled speculation for years.
Right.
But without concrete evidence, it's all just conjecture.
So we're left with a pile of confessions, each with its own tantalizing details, but ultimately lacking the hard evidence needed to crack the case.
Right.
It makes you wonder, what would it even take to definitively solve the D.B. Cooper mystery at this point?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
What constitutes proof in a case like this where the trail has gone cold and memories have faded? Would DNA evidence be enough? A verifiable confession? Or will we always be left with speculation and doubt?
It's like we're searching for a needle in a haystack and that needle might not even exist.
Exactly. And the passage of time only adds to the challenge. Witnesses have passed away, memories have become unreliable, and physical evidence may have deteriorated or been lost.
Yeah.
It's a case that seems destined to remain shrouded in mystery.
But that hasn't stopped people from trying right. The FBI might have officially closed the case in 2016, but there are still countless amateur sleuths researchers.
Yeah.
And even dedicated groups like the citizen sleuths mentioned in the D.B. Cooper Theories article who are determined to crack this case.
Absolutely. The case of D.B. Cooper is a testament to the enduring power of unsolved mysteries.
Yeah.
It's a story that continues to intrigue, inspire, and frustrate in equal measure.
Right.
And even if we never uncover the full truth, the pursuit of that truth will continue to drive people's curiosity for generations to come.
I love the pursuit of the truth. It's like we're all playing a part in this giant collaborative detective story.
Yeah.
And speaking of the pursuit of truth, let's move on to the next part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some of the most prevalent theories surrounding D.B. Cooper's fate and the enduring legacy of this enigmatic case.
You know, after poring over all this information, I keep coming back to that moment when Cooper jumped. It was a risky move, to say the least.
It really was.
Jumping into the darkness and the rain,
Yeah.
over rugged terrain,
Right.
with a parachute he might not have fully understood.
Right.
It's mind-boggling.
It really is. It's like he was playing Russian roulette with his life. What do you think was going through his head at that moment? Was it pure adrenaline, desperation? Or did he genuinely believe he could pull this off?
It's a question that has fueled endless debate. Was he a skilled skydiver with a carefully planned escape route? Or was he an amateur driven by a mix of desperation and bravado who just got lucky?
And the mystery of the missing ransom money only deepens the intrigue. We know some of it turned up years later along the Columbia River.
Right.
But what about the rest? Did he stash it somewhere, planning to retrieve it later?
Yeah.
Did he lose it during the jump? Or did he simply never make it out of that wilderness alive?
Theories abound, but there's no clear answer. Some experts, like the ones quoted in the D.B. Cooper Theories article, believe he couldn't have survived the jump given the conditions and his likely lack of experience. Others point to the fact that he demanded specific types of parachutes, suggesting some level of knowledge.
Yeah.
And then there are those who believe he meticulously planned his escape, stashing the money and disappearing into a new life.
It's a real head-scratcher, isn't it?
Yeah.
Every piece of evidence, every detail seems to lead to more questions than answers.
And that's precisely why this case continues to captivate us. It's like a giant puzzle with some crucial pieces missing.
Yeah.
And we're all trying to fill in the gaps to make sense of the seemingly senseless.
It's like that classic detective story where everyone has a theory.
Right. Exactly. And in the absence of a clear resolution, the speculation runs wild. Did he survive and live out his days under a new identity? Did he perish in the wilderness, his remains yet to be discovered?
Right.
Or is there some other explanation, some twist we haven't even considered?
It's almost like the mystery itself has become more important than the truth. D.B. Cooper has transcended the realm of a real-life criminal and entered the realm of myth and legend.
And that's something I find incredibly fascinating. Why are we so drawn to unsolved mysteries like this? Why do we spend so much time and energy trying to piece together a puzzle that may never be fully solved?
I think it's about more than just satisfying our curiosity.
Hmm.
It's about confronting the unknown, about grappling with the idea that there are things in this world that we may never fully understand.
And perhaps it's also about holding on to a sense of wonder, a belief that anything is possible. Even in a world increasingly dominated by technology and data, the D.B. Cooper case reminds us that there are still mysteries out there, stories that defy easy explanation and challenge our assumptions about what we think we know.
It's a reminder that reality can sometimes be stranger than fiction, and that's incredibly powerful.
I agree. The D.B. Cooper case isn't just a crime story. It's a story about human nature, about our need to understand, to solve,
Yeah,
to find meaning in chaos.
right.
And while we may never know definitively what happened to Cooper, the search for that truth, the endless speculation and debate will likely continue for generations to come.
It's a legacy that speaks volumes not only about Cooper himself, but about our own enduring fascination with the unknown.
Precisely. And I think that's a valuable takeaway from this deep dive.
Uh-huh.
We may never find all the answers,
Right.
but the process of searching, of questioning, of exploring different possibilities can be just as rewarding as the solution itself.
Well said. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the D.B. Cooper case, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought.
Okay.
What do you think happened to him? Did he survive that daring jump? Or did he become another victim of his own ambition?
The beauty of this case is that there's no right or wrong answer.
Right.
It's a story that each of us gets to finish in our own way, based on the evidence, the theories, and perhaps a little bit of our own imagination.
I love that. And I encourage all of you listening to continue exploring this case, to delve into the source material and to form your own conclusions. Maybe one day the full truth will be revealed. But even if it isn't, the mystery of D.B. Cooper will continue to captivate us, challenge us, and remind us that some stories are meant to be pondered, debated, and perhaps even enjoyed for their very lack of resolution.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the enigmatic world of D.B. Cooper.